What makes you pop? What makes you... And if anybody tells me they never, ever pop, they're fibbing to themselves, because they're not fibbing to me or God. But as Christians, should we allow our flesh life to control us, to control our emotions? Love is patient and kind, and it does not easily anger. It does not have a short fuse. The phrase "not easily angered" is actually just one word in the original Greek. Are you impressed? I'm not, because I don't know whether I'm going to be able to say it right. Hold on, I've been practicing all morning. Paroxino. To sharpen, to rouse to anger, exacerbate, or easily provoke. So if we use the word sharpen, I'm going to use an example a preacher gave me, and I thought it was really quite good. He likened it to a young child running around with sharp scissors. Yeah. Would you stop him? Why would you stop him? Because it's dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Might hurt themselves and others. And that's anger as well. See, when we get angry, it causes damage to ourselves and to others. And it can have a lasting effect for a long time. There is so much anger in the world today. I've been watching, when we were away, the only thing we had on TV was the news. And I kept saying, Martin, turn that flipping thing off. It was just negative all the time. People being killed, people being shot, people being stabbed, war. And when it first went on, I'll be honest, when it said the war, I thought it was Ukraine still. And then it was, because obviously different languages and different things. The trouble is, we're not shocked anymore. We're not shocked when we see that 20 people have been shot in France, I think it was, wasn't it? We're not shocked when we hear that a war is raging in Israel. We're not shocked. But should we be? Because what worries me is if we're not shocked, we're not going to pray. So it's not about not being shocked. It's the outcome of what we do about things. So if it don't touch our hearts, what we're going to do? Another 20. You know, those people, I don't know how many it was, but I think initially they said 20 and then they thought it might be less. 18. Those 18 people that were shot have families, are part of a community, are real. Might say it on the screen, but they're real. But what causes it? But do you think that all anger is wrong? Anyone? No. When Paul wrote this, he was reminding the church of the agape love of God, and that we need to get closer to Jesus, that we need to reflect Jesus. The closer we get, the closer and the more, shall I put my new teeth in? The closer we get to Jesus, the more we will reflect him. And then the less we will display the anger, and we won't be easily angered. At the beginning of this study of 1 Corinthians 13, 4 to whatever it is, Michael discussed love is patient. And that was the opening gambit of love. He starts off with love is patient. And he said that we should be tolerating one another. It doesn't mean we shouldn't correct or disciple, but we should be more tolerant. I have to be tolerant with things that don't go the way I like it to go. I struggle with people that say they'll do something and then don't do it. That's me. That's my push button. I can explode at those things. We all have an intolerance to something, but really we should tolerate one another. In truth, I'm sure at some point we all have been irritated. We have had that emotion well up in us, especially if somebody else is trying to block or stop a desire that's in our hearts. You know, when I think of something and Martin goes, I want to rip his head off. I think you need to rethink this. And I'm like, quite often, he's right. Because as I explained many times, if I'm told to jump in, I just jump in, apart from on holiday because it was cold. I just jump in. I don't think about how I'm going to get out, whereas Martin works out the logistics. If Mandy jumps in, I've got a bad back, I ain't going to get her out. We can all get irritated. So anger itself is not a sin, and we're told that in Ephesians 4:26. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. But I don't usually use the message for preaching, but Michael does, and I love this one. Go ahead and be angry. Get permission here. Go ahead and be angry. You do well to be angry, but don't use your anger as fuel for revenge. And don't stay angry. Don't go to bed angry. Don't give the devil that kind of foothold in your life. This is the Bible we're talking about. It isn't me. This is words from the Bible. There will be times when we get angry, but it's what we do with it that counts. We need to make sure that our anger doesn't cause us to sin, to seek revenge, to hit out. So when I was looking to see how many times God got angry, we had one of those moments where Martin disagreed with me. So I went with Martin this time, and I'll just name a few. So Moses in Exodus 4, when he said he couldn't speak to Pharaoh, God, it states, was angry with him. Sodom and Gomorrah, he wiped it out. You don't wipe something out you're not angry with. And then he got angry in Ezekiel against the nations who sought to destroy Israel. We're back there again, aren't we? And then Jesus, in Mark 3:5, it says, he looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. That was against the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the religious. You can't be healed on a Sabbath. And then in Matthew 21, we all know that one, don't we? Where Jesus turned the table. And I think we all use that. Well, you know, Jesus got angry. He turned the table. He was very, very angry. But then what did he do? He set himself outside Bethany for the night to be with God. So his anger at the disappointment at what went on didn't turn to sin. That is a man of God. Jesus, God-man, had to go aside and spend time outside of the area. So we don't have to pretend we don't get angry. We just have to ensure we are slow to anger. James 1:19-21 in the Message says, post this at all the intersections. So that's everywhere. Lead with your ears, follow up with your tongue, and let anger straggle along in the rear. I love that. I just love that. I don't know why. Anyway, God's righteousness doesn't grow from human anger. So throw all spoiled virtues and cancerous evil in the garbage. In simple humility, let our gardener, God, landscape you with the word, making a salvation garden of your life. And we don't fall into sin, being hot-tempered or flying off the handle. Usually involves snap judgments, seeking revenge, and refusing to give second chances. Did that read as it read on there? Because it didn't read right as I read it. Yeah, is it? True love refuses to jump to conclusions, take revenge, or judge hastily. Whilst I was away, as you do, being the pastor and people of righteousness, I was listening to Tim Keller, and it was really exciting because he was preaching on wisdom. And I realised whilst he was preaching on the wisdom that it's something we all need to grow in. Are you getting cold, Irene? Okay. I'll just tell them to turn the heating up if we are. Sarah's not here, so the flushes don't matter. Whilst I was listening to Tom Keller preaching on wisdom, he spoke about anger. And he said that there are three main types of anger. No anger and blow anger are the worst. They're bad angers. But slow anger is good. Whilst there is a dangerous power in anger, there is also a basic goodness in anger. He said anger that goes wrong must be healed, or it can become an addiction. And I'm sure we can all think of people we've come in contact with that they've hit out once and then it's continued. Why are there multiple killers? And because once they've done it once, it becomes an addiction. Multiple killers, serial killers. For poor people that are listening online. So, no anger. Having no anger. So, are you all thinking that surely that's a Christian? That we should have no anger? But it depends how you look at no anger. Because the Bible tells us to be slow to anger. It also says, be angry, but do not sin. So as Christians, we're supposed to reflect Jesus. God's anger is always based on love. So to not have any emotion at the injustice doesn't show God's love. You with me? If a loved one suffers from injustice and you don't respond, what does that say? If a loved one has a poor diagnosis and we just ignore it, does it show love? You see, there has to be some passion. There has to be a little bit of anger or annoyance at things, doesn't there? There has to be a little bit. But it's when we act on it. So it's okay to be angry and take it to God. I'm sure Nicola is a little bit angry at the moment, thinking, have I had enough? I know the last couple of years ago when we shared with you, we lay on the bed and went, oh Lord, really? Do we have to have any more? But if we've got to, give us the strength to get through it. Don't let us become resentful and bitter and angry. often God gets the blame for things that go wrong. He's all right. He can cope with that. You can shout at him. He don't mind. When you hear of a loved one that's being misrepresented or bullied, if you ignore it, you're not showing love. But there are ways of dealing with it in a right way. You can seek justice. You can pray to God to change a situation. You can allow God to change the problem. We all think of God as a God of love, and we think the God of wrath is of the Old Testament. But actually, I believe that the God of today, that was the God of the Old Testament, still gets angry at the injustice and the cruelty in this world and the things that are going on. And I do believe we will see that wrath in our lifetime if things don't change. I have a real sense of this urgency of bringing people to Christ and actually sharing the love of Christ and displaying that love, because I believe that the end times are coming quicker than we even thought they could. And I think we need to get an urgency. Doing nothing does not show love. We need to give a good impression to our children. And getting angry over something that's happening isn't the right way. But going to authority and dealing with it. I mean, I must admit, there have been times in my life, because you all know my daughters, have all of them have been in domestic violence. And there have been times in my life when I have wanted to go to them men and punch them back. I've wanted to see them fall. And I've wanted them to feel the hurt that my daughters have felt. But because I knew God, I knew that I just had to hand it over to them. Because God is the judge, not me. And they are loved. All three men are loved as much by God as I am. He might not love their ways. And I pray that one day they will meet him face to face and be able to say, I'm sorry for the harm I've done. If we attack when others are hurt, then all we're doing is showing a different kind of anger, which Tim Keller calls blow anger. Now, all of you, I'm sure, know that blow anger is just like dynamite. When you boof, everything is shot up and it damages so many people and causes a mess. Yeah? It causes communities to break down. It causes families to break down. As a lot of you will know, my granddaughter's boyfriend was stabbed. He was stabbed to death, and he was only 17, 18, and he lost his life. But 2 families lost their lives that day. The boy that stabbed him, just because he got a digital speaker that he wanted. He saw rage. He went home. He picked up a knife, and I'm not saying anything. It's been on social media. He picked up a knife. He's seen putting it down his sock. He goes up. He confronts his best friend. He pulls the knife out and he stabs him, and he drops dead. That family and the lad that killed him's family are destroyed because of a moment of red mist anger. That dynamite, that uncontrolled anger. And it says in Scripture that uncontrolled anger is bad for your health. Proverbs 14:29 to 30 in the Message says, slowness to anger makes for deep understanding. A quick-tempered person stockpiles stupidity. A sound mind makes for a robust body, but runaway emotions corrode the bones. Medically, I know that anger causes high blood pressure, strokes, headaches, and general ill health. and often leads to other forms of habit. When people get angry, they can turn to drink, drugs, and other things, which will often accelerate anger, not dampen it. Proverbs 15, verse 1 and verse 18 says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel." Anger that is explosive causes conflict and relational tension. When we experience blow anger, we can say things we don't mean, and they will have a lasting impact on somebody else's continued journey. Generally, once we've calmed down from that, we regret what was said. We can feel foolish. And during moments of explosive anger, we will make some irrational decisions and irrational statements. Angry people tend to be reoffenders. And this is why it's important that we turn those to Jesus. Those people that go into prison for continual fighting, they just need Jesus. Because anger is addictive. And I know this because personally, 2 nights ago, I had no sleep. Not because of my husband. He wanted me to stay. It wasn't in our home. But I got a phone call very late at night. And because of drink, there was induced anger. And it was spilling out. And it was affecting many people. In the background, I could hear a child screaming. Anger in these situations affects a lot of people. Do you know, my poor dogs weed themselves. Martin didn't. Anger controls you, not you, your anger. So let's look quickly at slow to anger. This is the type of anger the Bible tells us we should have. As already shared, James 1, verse 19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Many people will think that God is a God of fire and brimstone. Do you remember when they used to stand in the marketplace? It's heaven or hell. Well, it is, but, there are ways to say it. Turn or burn. However, if you study anger in the Bible, from the very beginning to the very end, there's a reoccurring verse or theme that says God is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. Driving can quickly turn into road rage. But if you're slow to anger and let people out and smile and wave, the journey will be far more relaxing than pushing to get to the front and be a few minutes earlier. Often, I've seen people come up behind me, and I'm not a slow driver, and they zoom past me, and then I get to the roundabout and the car in front, and I think, I would like to get out and say things, but I resist because I'm slow to anger. When someone snaps at you or argues with you, if you just remember, you don't know what's happened to them that day. You don't know what they're having to deal with. You don't know what they're going through. So instead of retaliating and snapping back, just take them aside slowly and say, "Are you okay? Do you want to meet me for coffee and chat about this? Is there a reason that you're upset today?" Or you could go, "Don't you talk to me like that." And all of a sudden, there's hurt, there's pain, and there's broken relationships. And I can't say I never do it, because sometimes I do. If Martin looks at me the wrong way, what's up with you? Snapping back will escalate a situation in the wrong way. So how do we ensure that we're slow to anger? We first need to pray. We talk about prayer so much, and I don't think we really grasp the fullness of prayer, the power of prayer. How, God just wants to talk to us, just like I'm talking to you lot today. God wants to hear you talking to him, and then he wants you to stop and listen to what he has to say. He loves to have a conversation with you. If you pray and take it back to God, then your experience of anger will not turn into a habit. God is not surprised, when you tell him, do you know what? Tom really irritates me when he bites his nails. I could get really angry with him. He knows that Tom biting his nails is my push button and I'm going to get him by the throat. He knows that. Not really, Tom. But God knows. He's not surprised. Don't try and hide the times you get angry. He knows. He goes before you. Tom's sitting on his hands. The other thing we need to do is listen more, speak less, and then when we do, think. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And if any one of them is no, then don't say it. Just pray on it a bit more. Burn your list of grievances. Because I don't care what you say, most of us will have a list of grievances against someone at some point. Might be stem back from childhood. Mine do, some of them. Destroy them. Because the only thing that grievances do is destroy you. And quite often, the person you're miffed with doesn't even know that they've miffed you. Finally, pray to share in God's righteous anger, to be passionate about the things that God is passionate about, and use your anger in a righteous way to implement change. I think it's time that as Christians we started to seek God about what he wants us to step up for. In my heart, I believe that God is saying we need to start and be a voice at certain things. And it won't be the same for Jess. It won't be the same for Cindy or Celia, because God is a God of all things and he cares about everything. But he wants us to stop sitting on our hands and start to be passionate about what he's passionate for. We should be praying, Lord, what do you want me to have a voice in? Where do you want me to get on my knees and pray for? Is it domestic violence? Is it the war? Is it the schools that there's no longer Jesus being spoken in schools? It's going to be different for each and every one of us. And it may not be that we have to take action and start standing with our banner. It may be that he just wants us to pray change. You see, God can change things. He don't need you. He chooses to use you. And I think that we need to start and use that righteous anger to change things in our community, change things in our family. Since I've come back from my holiday, all three of my daughters are at loggerheads. All the grandchildren are not talking. It's awful, and every time I say something, it causes more trouble. So God said, be silent. Sit still. Know that I am God. You can't change it. All you're doing is stirring it up even more. So to anger can help you be an influencer. It makes you get things done. Esther Wright, her son at 18 was stabbed to death. She was so angry she sought revenge. And then she met with God again. And she, through meeting with God and God dealing with that anger, her anger has now turned to the fact that she talks to communities about knife crime. She's spoken at a thing, I think it was Leeds, where they've made a, what do you call it? a memorial with all the knives. I can't remember where I think it's but wherever it is, made this memorial of all the knives that people have handed in because of knife crime. She went to the prison and forgave the guys that murdered her son. That has more power on them, on their family, and on the community than ever her anger did. And yet, in many ways, we would say she had a right to be angry. So as we move into this week, ask God what areas he wants to deal with and allow yourself to get closer to God, and then he will direct you and help you overcome. Love and unrighteous anger do not go hand in hand. The closer you get with God, the more time you spend with him personally as well as corporately, the more love will ooze from your heart. Anger will fade. Revenge will change to forgiveness. And red mist will turn to patience and humility. God calls us to be slow to anger. Not no anger. Not blow anger. If we are to reflect the love that Jesus had for us personally and the magnitude of that, we will be slow to anger. Like Jesus, our mission should be to turn over the tables of injustice in this world. Amen.